Welcome to Stethoscopes and Student Standpoints, the official podcast of the Alberta Medical Association, AMA, Medical Students Advocacy Committee, and the first ever inter-school podcast led by medical students in Alberta. My name is Sana.
And I'm Abdullahi.
Let's get into today's episode, why don't we?
So we have a special episode today. I think one that me and Sana we're pretty excited to record. And it's just why medical student voices matter. And we are also going to walk you guys through a day in the life of what it's like to be a medical student. Really important thing to note here, it's going to be a realistic day in the life. So me or Sana won't be talking about waking up at like 4 a.m. to go work out and doing 1,000-year-old and ABOS questions and
with our personalized Anki remotes that's engraved with our names
while we're publishing 6 studies at the same time. No,
none of that. And we have no scripts in front of us today, so that's how you know you're getting the real raw reactions and getting into the meat of it. And we'll also talk a little bit about advocacy and how it relates to medical students, of course.
And how you as a medical student can get involved in the different opportunities available to us at the University of Alberta.
Exactly. And the U of A is actually pretty good at incorporating the current healthcare policies and the issues that affect us and exposing them right in the get-go. Right when we start in first year, we get a little flavor of it and we get to see it firsthand. So that's always great.
Yeah. Tons of opportunities. So we will start with the most exciting part, a day in the life. So Sana, walk us through what was today like for you? What did you do when you got up today, Monday morning?
Okay, so I must admit, this entire year I've been very night owl. I've been trying to fix my schedule though, so I actually woke up at a reasonable time. I woke up this morning at 8 a.m., learned it was St. Patrick's Day, very exciting. Then I went this morning to DL. So DL is Discovery Learning. We are essentially sitting in a group of 10 people and we're discussing cases, and it changes through each block. So if you're not familiar, at U of A here, we follow the block system. So we have different systems like GI, Repro, Neuro, and we go through those systems one by one through the first 2 years, which is our pre-clerkship years, and the last 2 years, our clerkship years. We go and we're in the wards and getting on that, getting the hands-on exposure. U of C, since they're affiliated with this podcast, let's talk about them a little bit. They have a different system where they're all integrated, so it's by theme, and I'm not from UMC, so I won't speak too much on it, but for example, they're learning about pain, for example, and they'll incorporate all the different systems that are involved with pain. For example, GI pain, what is pain that you see in like neuropathy, etc. So we started off the day with DL, and why don't you tell them a little bit about our DL case?
Yeah, so we work through a case, and so literally it's released in pages. You don't get the whole case at once, and it almost like walks you through it as if you're like in the emerge or as if you're in a family medicine clinic, and like literally the first page is like a patient walks in and they present with XYZ and you're a doctor at such and such hospital, right? And then you pause and you get to discuss with your group. And we have these things called preceptors, which are sort of physicians who are in that specialty who come in and like moderate and mediate the session. And guide our discussions. And so a lot of the times the case we'll be covering in DL is not something we've actually learned about yet. And so the interesting thing is we get to like teach ourselves and we get to work through it and rationalize. And I feel like it really helps me when I end up learning how the thing actually works. I always have that moment where it all clicks and I'm like, oh, that's what we were talking about this morning. Oh, that makes sense now, right? So a lot of the times with DL, I don't think I ever study my DLs, but like just because we have to kind of teach ourselves and it's like a difficult conversation to have, you kind of just remember how it went. And so we kind of walk through those cases, and at each step of the way, we're really challenged as if we are actually there and what do we do? So like, for instance, let's say patient comes in, you get the signs and symptoms, and they're like, well, what's your differential? Like literally list everything you think it could be, right? And then after that, it's like, what labs are you going to order? What imaging are you going to do? So it's a very, I'd say, immersive experience. And I love that it's collaborative and you get to work with your classmates on this. And then the last part, I think the thing most people like least about DL is this thing called learning objectives. So after the session, we kind of have to go and like research and look up certain things that's been outlined as like we don't know and we need to learn. And so you come in the next session with your learning objectives prepared, and you'd discuss that with your group and share, like teach the group.
It's really great. They're sometimes pretty big groups as well. I think our group this time is about 10 people, and it's really interesting seeing everybody's perspective. The preceptor, for example, today pretended to be the patient, and we had to take the history from them. So it's really fun to see how your classmates would word or approach things, especially sensitive topics, and how it differs from yours. I know I'm myself, for example, when bringing up more sensitive information, I'm a little worried about the wording, and it's fun to see how other people decide to bring that up with their patients, and just learning from other students who are in the exact same position as us. And we're in neuroblock right now, so our patient case was a 75-year-old woman, and it was actually her daughter that came in on her behalf and was worried about her behavior that was potentially worrisome and could have potentially been dementia or delirium. So we were kind of teasing apart which is which, and that was really interesting. So I started off my day just breakfast, actually ate. I knew I had a test coming up later in the day. Well, I'll talk about that in a little bit later. So I decided to do some readings for that, just freshen up. And then I came to school. After about 2 hours-ish of studying, had DL, that's another 2 hours we spent there. And then it was lunchtime. I like to take it pretty easy at lunchtime. I was sitting with some friends, and we were casually talking / testing each other for the upcoming kind of quiz test component that we had coming off. And that takes us to about around 1 p.m. where we had TBL. It's called team-based learning, and that's the test quiz thing I keep referring to. Essentially, we get to do a multiple choice, a couple of them, usually about 14, 15 was today's. And after we submit it, we sit in a group of about 5-ish people, and we discuss what we put for each answer. And that's honestly one of my favorite things, and I really prefer that over a traditional exam and quiz, and I'm really happy they've incorporated that in there, because you get to see what your classmates put, what's their reasoning. Sometimes I'll put a completely different answer than my peers, and I'll go, wait guys, why did you all put A and why did I think it was C? And the slight embarrassing component of that makes me remember it, and I don't forget the ones that I get wrong. And I remember I was shadowing the other day, and there was a case that we saw, and it was a man presenting with leg pain. I was like, oh, that was the question I got wrong in last block. So it definitely helps me remember that. And then we do that multiple choice, and we submit it as a group, so we have to all come up with consensus. And how do you like that, Abdullahi? How do you feel about 2BL?
I really like the concept of TBL. It's, well, from one point of view, it's like your grade, half of it is the independent quiz, and then you do the same quiz again with your group, and that's the other half of your grade. So like if you didn't study too well and like you're a little behind, like you kind of get carried a bit by the group mark, which is always great. But it's, again, just like DL, it's a great learning opportunity to collaborate and communicate. And I feel like you're not just learning the content itself, but you're learning how to communicate and work with other people in like a medical context around a medical case, the same way you would be in the wards, right? The same type of discussions you'd have if you were like working with a, healthcare team, right? So I think we get that valuable skill as well as learn the material we need to learn as well. So I think it's great. Again, it's not like I'm saying I love doing tests, but if I had to do a test, I'm glad that it's one where half my grade is from the collaborative part.
For sure. And it's just easier to remember, and in the long term, I definitely think it's the best thing for retention and learning those soft skills, like Abdullahi said, of collabing with each other. One issue that we'll bring up maybe in the advocacy piece later on in this podcast is just there's so much collab in medicine. There's different specialists that are working together, especially if someone has more complicated healthcare concerns. They all have to learn how to communicate, and miscommunications can be a huge detriment to someone's health. Yeah. So learning that.
I think while we're on this, concept of communication, I think this is a great natural segue into the next part of our discussion about advocacy and how you can be involved in that as a medical student. Like we mentioned, a lot of our curriculum revolves around collaboration and communication and working well with others. And that really makes it a lot easier when you want to, take that extra step and take that initiative and advocate for issues that you're passionate about. It's a lot easier to communicate and collaborate with your classmates on these sort of issues when you guys do that all year during DL and TBL, right? And all these group-based learning sessions, all these case-based learning sessions. And so at U of A, the baseline way to get involved in advocacy is first through class council, where it's a committee with different seats, and each seat is responsible for a different thing. So we'd have like a class treasurer, and we'd have like our I think there's like a representative advocating for like every piece involved. So there's like a class research rep, there's like a class admissions committee rep, there's a
professionalism rep, and just working together there, and it's all student governance, right?
Yeah, and so everyone gets this opportunity to, again, apply for the role they're interested in and they're passionate about, and advocate for that issue and try to make a difference, working collaboratively with the rest of the council to have an impact and make a change at the class level, right? At the school level. And then if we take that a step further, there's the MSA, right? And that's another opportunity to get involved and help make, with that decision-making process that's affecting the entire medical school across all 4 years, not just your own class.
That's the Medical School Association, all these abbreviations, very confusing.
Yeah. There's a lot more to come in this talk, because we also have the BMSA, which is the Black Medical Students Association, and the IMDSA, the Indigenous Medical Students Association. And again, both of which are groups where individuals who are part of these populations can advocate for themselves and advocate for the students. And so I myself am one of the execs with the Black Medical Students Association. And with that opportunity, right, we're able to have this closer connection with sort of the faculty and the dean, and we have this level of accessibility where we can, if there's ever an issue, if there's ever a problem, we can advocate for ourselves. We can have conversations with the people in charge, which I think is very valuable to have that representation, especially when you're underrepresented in the class, right, numbers wise. So there's definitely tons of opportunities as a medical student to get involved without having to go above and beyond and create like a brand new initiative and stuff, right? A lot of this has been, it's things that the faculty and, previous classes and previous students have noticed issues that need addressing and have been addressed. And I love that there's this longitudinal pattern where a lot of these initiatives that start, they continue throughout the years and they have an impact, over a long period of time.
And that's what you kind of get involved with after class time. So kind of circling back to a day in our lives, we're both in the same year. We're both in second year at U of A. And after TBL, we really had time just to ourselves. So we're working on this podcast right now, and that's an initiative Abdullahi and I started. So there's definitely room to also have time for the things you're passionate about, the clubs. Getting those soft skills is also so important to medicine, not just medical knowledge that simple AI, honestly, nowadays can do. We have strength in being humans, and that's getting those skills that we can learn through these clubs. So what about starting clubs, Abdullahi? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so you can, through the MSA, start initiatives and start clubs. So if you feel like there is a need for something or a lack of something out there that you think needs to be addressed, there's definitely the opportunity to do that. And again, you get support through the MSA. There's also the Office of Advocacy and Wellbeing that we have that will also help you with these sort of things. And so one initiative I was a part of or able to help build the foundations for and start out with was the surgical outreach program, where promoting like medical school and getting involved in healthcare to underrepresented populations in healthcare, in medicine, and promoting it, right? And so with the surgical outreach program, it's a program that started, I think, the year that when I was in first year. And it was just going to schools and having like teaching kids like really basic like sutures, like a continuous running suture or like interrupted sutures and stuff. And it wasn't just about teaching them how to suture. I don't think an 8th grader needs to know how to suture. That's not the point of it. But to really just like motivate and inspire them and let them know, hey, like this is something that you could do. This is something for you potentially, right? Just having that memory of like, hey, like if I was in junior high and I had a bunch of med students and doctors like teach me how to suture and tell me, hey man, you can be a surgeon if you want to. You can do anything you want to. And they gave me a whole talk. I would leave that pretty inspired, right? And so I think that was something I was really passionate about, and we had the opportunity to sort of start this initiative through, again, collaborating and communicating with like-minded individuals in my class who also had similar interests. And again, a lot of support through like, applying to the MSA, to the initiative and whatnot. And speaking of clubs and starting initiatives, I feel like the best person to answer that kind of question is sitting right here with me. So Sana, tell us about the initiatives you had an opportunity to begin.
Yeah, so like Abdullahi said, for sure there are existing clubs and you can work on new initiatives if they are within the realm of those. But something that wasn't existing was the AMA Medical Student Advocacy Club, which is what I ended up doing in my first year. That's the club that's producing this podcast that you're listening to right now. And I wanted to get students involved with the Alberta Medical Association, which is an association that represents physician interests, ultimately looking out for the well-being of patients in Alberta, and is that body that helps negotiate and really look out for and listen to the voice of physicians, the frontline workers who are seeing these patients who have valuable insights into healthcare policies and bring it into politics and healthcare policies, et cetera, that are made by the government. So I wanted medical students to get involved with that, just so, first of all, we're an underrepresented group in terms of we haven't worked that many years, and sure, maybe that means that we shouldn't have the loudest voice in the room, but we should have a voice in the room where we give our takes and we find out about what is happening in healthcare policy. How can we contribute to it? So that's really what this committee is all about, and it's helping medical students connect with the AMA, and they've been lovely enough to let us start this podcast.
And I think an important thing that this committee does, and this is me as someone like speaking as an outsider who's not part of the committee itself, is it keeps us informed.
That's true.
Right. And I there's always those Instagram posts, and there's always, if different events and different things you're doing that, like, we have that opportunity to have our voice heard, but we also get to be in the loop of things. And I think sometimes that helps. You never want to find out like on the news about some big healthcare decision that was made without ever knowing that it was an actual thing in the the process.
Something recently that's happened is the ARPs that were added for the family physicians, and we'll talk about that in a different episode. If you have no idea what an ARP is, do not worry. So just the different funding models and how that affects family medicine, and does that bring more seats, or does that help with the filling of seats in Alberta that recently we've been unable to fill in family medicine? So that's something that I truly had no idea what was prior to getting affiliated with the AMA. So it really helped for that. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of a day in the life in a medical student. It's really going to classes, having those collaborative approaches, learning the content. And like I said this morning, I was studying alone at school or at home, but then you come and you converse, and me and Abdullahi are in the studio recording this podcast today for you guys. So there's clearly free time. That's it for today's episode of Stethoscopes and Student Standpoints. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode. This is the official podcast of the AMA Medical Student Advocacy Committee, and if you found this discussion insightful, make sure to subscribe and follow us for more conversations if you're tuning in on the website, amamedicalstudents.ca, and you can look forward to more conversations on medical education, advocacy, and healthcare reform.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.